If you've spent any time around essential oils, you've probably heard clary sage oil described as a hormone balancing oil. Recently, I decided to take a deeper dive into the details of this essential oil. I reviewed its biochemistry, some of the traditional literature, as well as human clinical research. What I found out about clary sage oil is consistent about what I've learned about essential oils for over the past 20 years. Essential oils never directly manipulate one pathway or just have one effect. So I wasn't surprised to find that clary sage still has no evidence that it is distinctly hormonal or estrogen-like acting in the body. What it does affect is stress physiology, autonomic nervous system regulation, and the neuroendocrine pathways that influence hormonal patterns more broadly. So in this video, I want to walk through what the research actually shows, how I think about it clinically, and where clary sage oil fits in my practice. And if you want the full breakdown, including all the studies, the references, you'll want the full updated monograph with the research summarized on my website, and you're going to want to watch the whole video. So first, if you're new, welcome. My name is Dr. Sarah LoBisco. I've worked with essential oils for over 20 years, and I use them consistently in my naturopathic and functional medicine practice. For me, essential oils are a holistic tool that integrates the mind-body connection directly. This is through how smell, as well as these aromatic molecules, interact directly with olfactory pathways that go to our brain and regulate our nervous system and physiology. This broader lens that incorporates integrative medicine with aromatherapy is what I use to look at when I review the research on essential oils. So when we're talking about clary sage oil, which is often placed in this category of hormone supportive essential oils, it has some basis based on traditional use and early assumptions about its chemistry, specifically the molecule sclareol. Yet when you look at the human research alongside with its constituents, the more consistent findings relate to this indirect hormonal effect and how it impacts, again, our stress response, our autonomic regulation, rather than this direct endocrine activity. In other words, the research does support hormone balancing effects across the lifespan, from things such as PMS, menstrual discomfort, pregnancy support, and menopause. But the result of this hormonal balancing impact is related to the synergy of all its acting components on multiple systems and pathways due to its aromatic and biochemical influences. So in my monograph on this oil, I go through this chemistry in detail, the estrogenetic claims and the human clinical studies, so you can see the full picture. But let me highlight a little more about the estrogenetic claims of clary sage. A lot of the estrogenetic discussions around clary sage comes from one constituent called sclareol. Because of its structure, it was initially assumed that it might have hormone-like activity, but structure similarity alone doesn't tell us much clinically. And in fact, in this context, it isn't even a steroid hormone, which means it isn't derived from cholesterol. It doesn't form estrogen or progesterone or testosterone. To be precise, it's actually a bicyclic diterpene alcohol. For a compound to have an estrogenic effect in humans, it has to bind to these receptors with meaningful affinity and reach biologically relevant concentrations. When we look at the human data on inhalation or topical use of clary sage essential oil, this doesn't appear to be the case. There isn't strong enough evidence of clinical significance that shows estrogenic activity. In fact, preclinical data actually shows that this compounds to have anti-proliferative effects in breast cancer lines. Furthermore, the amount of sclareol present in clary sage varies greatly based on quality distillation processes and the part used of the plant. And it's just not the predominant compound found in clary sage. Esters are. So clary sage being estrogenic doesn't hold up in human research. What does show up consistency is clary sage effects on nervous system and the stress physiology. Human studies looking at inhalation of clary sage have observed changes in markers tied to the autonomic nervous system activity, cortisol-related outcomes, heart rate variability, and mood. And that's important because hormonal function does not work in isolation. The nervous system, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis or HPA axis, immune signaling, and reproductive hormones are all interconnected. So when we think about your nose and aroma directly connect to the region of the brain regulating hormones, which is through the HPA axis, these aromatic compounds in essential oils aren't manipulating hormones, they're modulating them in their output in a way that is similar to how the body would. And it also, there's these aromatic compounds have biochemical influences that influence our underlying physiology, which can affect sleep, mood, cycle regularity, and symptom patterns across reproductive transitions. Like all oils, I consistently find is that they impact our brain and regulatory systems upstream of hormones rather than directly with the hormones themselves. They also act downstream by balancing our physiology through their anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, immunosupportive, and other properties. Clinically, when I use Clary Sage, I am not thinking about using it as this hormone correcting tool. I'm thinking of it as a holistic support tool for hormones in the whole body. Usually, when I'm addressing someone that I believe the root cause is stress physiology is not balanced, it's clearly part of this hormonal stress interactive pathways. Things I'll see such as sleep disruption, emotional overwhelm, cyclical symptom flares, perimenopausal changes. These are all stress responsive and they're impacting hormones. I think of clary sage oil. And I use oils as part of this broader plan in my functional and naturopathic medicine practice that complements and works with the other foundations that include nutrition, blood sugar support, sleep, movement, and nervous system regulation. And they're such an easy, accessible tool that really does impact the mind body in such a profound way. So, when you pull all of this information together, in summary, clary sage does not show strong evidence for direct estrogen activity in humans, but it does show interesting effects on stress-related physiology and brain and nervous system regulation, which is closely tied to hormonal regulation. And that's really the key point. Because real physiology, all systems are connected. It isn't about manipulation of the body. And essential oils like clary sage help to address and support hormonal health and other aspects of health because they literally impact the brain and body through their aromatic and biochemical effects. To do this in a gentle way, they nudge the body to and the brain to regulate. Again, this gentle process that works with your body. So if you're curious about learning more about clary sage, I hope this gives you a clearer sense of what the research actually supports. And I hope that you check out my full article in detail. And if you want to get more guidance from a naturopathic and functional medicine doctor on how essential oils and supplements fit into your wellness plan, well, you're working with a conventional medicine or even with an integrative doc and a conventional medical doctor, I do provide support with additional resources on how essential oils can fit into this picture clinically. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, this channel, and then watch for spaces when essential oil consults open up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.